Okay, good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to today's event brought to you by the YNS Nazarian Center for Israel Studies. We are honored to have with us Professor Sammy Smooha, a distinguished scholar and one of Israel's foremost sociologists, whose lecture today titled Israel's Palestinian-Arab Citizens, Why They Play by the Rules, will explore the complex status of Palestinian-Arab citizens of Israel. I would like to first begin by introducing Professor Smooha. Professor Sammy Smooha is a Professor Emeritus of Sociology at the University of Haifa and a laureate of the prestigious Israel Prize in Sociology. He holds a doctoral degree from UCLA, so he's an alumni here, and is a member of the Israel Academy of Sciences and Humanities. And also, he serves as a visiting professor and senior research fellow at numerous academic institutions worldwide. His career has been devoted to examining Israel's society through a comparative lens, with particular focus on ethnic relations, democracy, and internal divisions and conflicts that shape the nation. He is a formative figure. I teach many of Professor Smooha's writings in my courses, and I'm sure we are into a wonderful treat today, having the opportunity to listen to him speak firsthand and here in person and also online. For the people in the audience, if you have questions, please note that you have note cards on the table and pens. You can use those to write your questions in the Q&A. And of course, our audience online is welcome to submit their questions to the Q&A box. And now I would like to invite you all to please join me in welcoming Professor Smooha.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be back to UCLA after you won't believe when I graduated from UCLA. So it's really happy, and I would like to thank Tamar and also Dov Waxman for enabling me to speak to you and to share with you my analysis of very sensitive and critical question. I'm going to talk about Israel within the pre-67 borders, not on the West Bank, not in Gaza, only about Palestinian Arabs who are citizens of Israel since 1948. So can you go to the next, please? We are talking about 1.6 million Arab citizens, 18% of Israel citizens. Now, if you go to the formal definition, you will find that Arabs in Israel, they constitute 21% according to the state, but they include Arabs in East Jerusalem, which I exclude because they are not citizens. So I'm talking about only 18% of the Arabs in Israel. All these Arabs have been around in Israel since 1948. So they were citizens for a long time, now 4 or 5 generations of Palestinians who are in Israel. So you have really to bear in mind, I'm not talking about the West Bank and Gaza or Palestinians in the diaspora. I'm talking about those people who are part and parcel of Israeli society and state, the Palestinians. So without East Jerusalem and without Palestinians in the occupied territories. Next, please. Now, I use the term to play by the rules. What I mean by saying that a group of people plays by the rules. plays by the rules for keeping law and order. They don't rebel. If they feel badly treated by the state or by the majority, they will not rebel. They will struggle intensively, whatever, but within the bound of the law and democratic procedures. This is what I mean, that the group or the minority plays played by the by. Now, what say uh, minorities who are deprived and discriminated against, and what they will do, they can organize a resistance movement to fight the state, not just by law, by going to elections and having interest groups, whatever that you can do within democracy. A resistance movement means that they will use violence to challenge the state or the majority which would deprive them. Okay, so one way is to see if they have a resistance movement. The other way of not playing by the rules, that they disrupt life in society, in the state. They will do all kinds of things which they cannot let the state and the people in the state to manage their daily life. Say they go for a strike endlessly, they can stop transportation, whatever. If they don't do that, for me, by default, I would say they play by the rules. Okay? Now, if they play by the rules, one test of playing by the rules, suppose they will do all kinds of protests, but within the law, and they disrupt life from time to time, not endlessly. So this I call resilient coexistence. This means that even for if a while they don't play by the law, after a while they go back, and then the coexistence continues as before, even maybe sometimes better. So this is playing by the rules. So it's clear that what I mean by this term. Now, what kind of evidence I'm going to produce in my discussion? I'm going to make an analysis of the status of the minority in society in various areas by analyzing the conditions of this minority and the way the state treats this minority and how the majority relates to the minority. That's one way. So it's a general analysis of the situation. But also I'm going to use surveys, public opinion surveys, and I've been conducting public opinion surveys now since 1976 of Arab and Jewish relations. I already made 66 surveys about this relation. So I have some idea what Arabs and Jews think of each other over time, not just because of this war or that crisis, but generally speaking. So I'm going to also to quote findings of my mostly my last survey, which was done last year. Last year, not so it's before the war, done before the war, but after the right-wing government of today took over. So already it's this you have the effect of the ascendance of the political right in Israel. Okay, so I just should mention that this survey is funded by Israel Science Foundation. Next. Now let's go. This is general introduction. Now let's go into Palestinian Arabs in Israel. I'll start by discussing what pushes Palestinian Arabs in Israel to rebel. What are the factors? What are the bad conditions for them that push them to break, not play by the rules, to break the rules? Okay, not what. So I'm going to that's to do, and to see that the question is really serious. They have really good reasons, serious reasons to rebel. So I'm going to analyze the situation. First of all, Arabs in Israel are considered by the state and by the Jews as potentially disloyal to the state. They are part of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are formally, legally, are enemy of Israel. That's the way Israel defined the Palestinians. Palestinians mean the West Bank, Gaza, the refugees in Lebanon, Syria, whatever. Palestinians are considered to be the enemy. If you are part of the enemy, then you are suspected that you are not loyal to the state, and you can do all kinds of things against the state. Okay. So if Arabs in Israel are treated this way, are considered to be disloyal, not considered to be potentially disloyal, then of course it's in very bad condition to be. Okay, let me give you some findings now from the surveys of last year. 63% of the Arabs say it is justified for Arabs in Israel to open an intifada if their condition does not largely improve. Arabs in Israel says it's legitimate for them to do intifada is resistance movement. It's to start a revolt using arms. So Arabs in Israel say, but believe me, it's not because of this the right-wing government took over. They have been saying this now for the last 10 years. They feel their situation is not improving, and they say it is legitimate for us to have a resistance movement. Now, 64% now in a survey done in 2021 believe that most Arabs in Israel want a Palestinian state instead of Israel. So they want to do away with Israel and to establish a new state, Palestinian state instead of Israel. That's very radical, isn't it? Because the way they see themselves as part of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are repressed, and their situation is not changing. So that's the way they see it. Okay, then another finding, 66% of the Jews think that an Arab who defines himself or herself as Palestinian Arab in Israel cannot be loyal to the state and to its laws. This means Palestinian identity in Israel is considered by the Jewish majority as disloyalty. Very clear. So they will not accept an Arab who identify as a Palestinian. If he says, I am an Arab, that's okay. No problem with to say I'm Arab, that's legitimate. But to say, I am a Palestinian, this means you declare yourself as part of the enemy. So if you declare yourself as part of the enemy, then obviously for a Jew, an average Jew, that you cannot be loyal to the state. Okay? So that's one reason. One reason that Arabs in Israel are in a very bad situation, the way they see, because structurally they are part of the enemy, and then they are considered to be potentially disloyal. Okay. Now I take another very big factor. Arabs in Israel are dissident, ideologically dissident. This means they reject the fundamental ideology of the state. What is the fundamental ideology of the state of Israel? Is Zionism. All Israeli governments since 1948, all of them, doesn't matter right or left or center, whatever government, all of them were Zionist governments implementing Zionist projects, policies, and so forth. So, so to be a minority which rejects the basic ideology of the state, how can you then identify with the state? Well, then why should you obey the laws of the state which you don't share the basic ideology? Not policy, ideology. Something very fundamental. So now I'll give you some findings. 45% of the Arabs define themselves. We asked them the question. I have been asking Arabs the question: How do you define yourself vis-a-vis Zionism? The way you understand Zionism. Okay, give them four answers. A Zionist, no, very Zionist, Zionist, not Zionist, and anti-Zionist. Almost. Now, people who answer Zionist, they are about 1 or 2%, and these are Druze. Because in my sample are also Druzes. For me, Arabs in Israel, when I say Arabs in Israel, I include the Druze as well, because they are also a minority. They are Arabs in their language and culture, and their religion is just something from Islam and so forth. But they don't see themselves as part of the Muslim minority. But whatever. But the main thing is that 45% say they are not Zionist, and 54% they say they are anti-Zionist. So they are not Zionists. No, Arabs do not define themselves, and most of them, they say they are anti-Zionist. They want to do away with Zionism. Now, 80% of the Arabs say that Israel, as a Zionist state, is a racist state. They see that we are in Israel, we live with the Jews, but the state in which we are, it is a racist state. It means it's discriminatory against us. Now, 83%, when we ask them, if you want to improve relation with the Jews, will you agree to avoid struggle for changing the character, the Jewish character of the state? They say no. 83% say we will not give up the struggle against the national character, the Jewish character, the Zionist character. So it's very clear then that they are ideologically dissident. You know what does it mean, ideologically dissident? For example, if you were in Russia, say in the 30s, Soviet Union, in the 30s or 40s, and you say, I am against communism. I mean, it's not acceptable at all, to be, or if you are during the 19th century or 14th century, and you say it's the Catholic are over, it's the Catholicism is the dominant. It's the only religion, say before Protestant, and you say I'm against Catholicism, so you are a dissident. So it's not accepted, and it's very bad. Okay. Now I'll give you now more reasons why Arabs should be against. There are discriminatory state policies against Arabs. So it's not just ideology and you are part of the enemy and you cannot identify with the state and so on. There are practically discrimination against Arabs and not discrimination by ordinary Jews in the street. No, not only that, it's there too, but the state discriminates against Arabs. For example, funding education, Arab education in Israel. Jewish education gets twice funds than Arab education. Now, the most sensitive question in Israel is land. The state, still 93% of the land in Israel is public, it's not private. Mostly held by the state. And Israel, the state allocates land to build, say, a new neighborhoods or a new villages or towns and so forth. But Israel does not do that for Arabs. Does it only for Jews. So they feel discriminated against. They have a population growth and they need to more land for housing. And Israel does not. It allocates, but not enough for them. And they feel very bad about that. Now, again, give you some the way they feel, but in my survey findings, 76% they say they of the Arabs stand for abolishing the nation state law, and 21 they say that you have to add equality principle to the law. You know what is the nation state law? This is a law legislated in 2018 by the right-wing government, by Netanyahu, and this law it's a kind of constitutional law, and it says in this law that the state belongs to the Jewish people, only to the Jewish people, only. So it doesn't belong to its citizens. Now, if you are an Arab, citizen of the state, the law says you don't own the state. Only the Jews own the state, not only the Jews who are citizens of Israel. All the Jews in the world, even if they are not citizens, they own Israel. And this is, of course, it's course that it is very bad for them. Also, the law says that the government of Israel should do something for Jewish settlement of the land. So to establish more settlements, it doesn't say where, it says to establish more settlements. So this is one thing. The other thing is that that Arabs say, when you ask them, how much you think, we say Arabs, do you believe there is a discrimination against Arabs in Israel? And 83% they say a great deal of discrimination. So that's the way they feel how much they are discriminated against. Now in Israel, when you go out of the country, there are security checks, like in the airport. And in Israel, there is ethnic profiling in checking. And Jews were asked the Jews, should we do away with the ethnic profiling? So everyone who is living in the country will be treated equally. The Jews object to that. So it's very clear that every, 71% of the Jews make a difference between an Arab and Jew. They see an Arab as potentially disloyal to future move. Okay, I have to rush. Now, there are also exclusionary state policies, not only discriminatory, but also exclusionary. Now, all the symbols of the state are Jewish. There is no an Arab symbol in the state symbolic symbol systems. Now, Arab parties only there are one or two cases that are excluded in government coalition. And in Israel, the decision making is made by the government, and all Israeli government always are coalition government, means few parties, because there is no one party which has a majority, it has all and Arab parties are excluded. Okay, I cannot go into detail when it was taken and so forth, but generally speaking. Now there is the Jews are against letting Arabs to move to Jewish towns. They have the right, of course, the legal right to move to Jewish towns, but usually there is some resistance. And now we ask also Jews in Jewish samples, are you willing to have an Arab friend, an Arab neighbor, and are you willing to have Arab supervisor at your work? And you can see 30% they say they don't want an Arab to have as a friend, 58 as a neighbor, and 41 they say that they don't want an Arab to be their supervisor. Can you imagine? That's against Zionism. That means they don't trust Arabs. They don't want Arabs they feel superior to an Arab, so they don't want to be under supervision an Arab. So this is very bad for Arabs, okay? I'm rushing because now the war. The war made the situation worse because the war is against the Palestinians, between the Palestinians and Israel. It's not about Arab countries, it's the Palestinians. So they feel very distressed. They feel that their people are killed in Gaza. I keep mass killing. It's not, here and there one action. It's something which really have never been at that scale. And so they feel a kind of Nakba. Nakba means a disaster, the second disaster. The first one's in 1948, when they did not build a state of their own. Most of their people became refugees. Their villages and towns were destroyed by Israel and so forth. So this was a Nakba. Now they feel that's another Nakba of the Palestinian. It's not that they are identified what the Hamas did, on October 7th. They don't identify themselves, but they feel that Israel is doing something disproportionately to the Palestinians, and they feel very much frustrated. Now, how they wish to protest, to do something about this, but Israel will not let them to do. I mean, Israel does not let them to protest, to do demonstrations. Because they say if they start with demonstration, you never know, maybe they will revolt and they join. Now, the Hamas calls on Arabs to join the rebellion, the war against the Jews, to kill the Jews, to do away with Israel, with Jews. They call about the Arabs in Israel to do that. So they are frustrated because they cannot do it, or they don't want to do it. Now, if they express any sympathy in the social media, if they express, the police is after them, some of them are dismissed from work for that. Doctors, not only, simple people, also doctors, professionals, and so forth. So Israel is very much intolerant of their behavior. Now, all other figures disappeared from the public media in Israel. You don't have a Knesset member, Arab Knesset member, who is interviewed on the radio or on TV. They disappeared. They don't want to ask them. They don't want to know their opinions, and also they are, in fact, they are also fear. They don't want to talk themselves. Okay, so. Uh, so then the question is, if they play by the rules. I said I give you all the reasons why they don't, why they are driven not to play by the rules. But the fact is that they play by the rules. How I know that they play by the rules? Israel had since 1948 wars with the Arab countries, and there were two intifadas of the Palestinians in 1987 and in 2000 till 2003, something like that. And they didn't join. They didn't join this struggles. So they say, we sympathize with the Palestinian, but we don't participate. So this means that you obey, that you play by the rules. Okay. They struggle. Arab struggles in Israel is very intense. For many years, they make strikes, general strikes. They make massive demonstrations. They do all kinds of within the law, not using violence. They haven't disrupted life in Israel by any general strike or civil disobedience campaign and so forth. Now, what about elections? Do they participate in elections? They can boycott the elections. All Arab states, we don't want to. They haven't done that. They have done it once for prime minister, the direct election of prime minister. But usually they go for election. Now their voting rate is much lower than the Jewish rate. They vote now about 50%. And the Jews are 70%, 75%. So it's very clear that they register their protest this way. Okay? Now, if this is the case, and I am sure it is the case, I also want to make this point much stronger. So this is not a question of individual Arab. Individual Arabs say, I don't want to get troubled, I don't want to do that, I'm too old, I'm too young, whatever. I don't want, it's not. It's a community decision. The Arabs as a community, as a group make this decision to play by the rules. And they believe that playing by the rules, it's their interest, national interest to do that. It's not a question of what I think or that thing. Arabs as a whole, that's the way they live. And if Arabs say some of them are terrorists, from time to time you find some Israeli Arab terrorists, they censor this terrorism. They say they endanger our status in Israel. So Arabs should not make terrorism in Israel. Because they feel if they make terrorism, they will endanger their secure life in Israel. Okay? And now we are going into the question, why are playing by the rules? Okay? I am going to discuss 5 macro reasons, macro reasons, why the Arabs as a community, they play by the rules. And I divide this into two parts, two kinds of reasons. One I call negative factors and positive, but also positive factors. When you ask Israelis, Israelis are aware of that the Arabs in Israel play by the rules. But always they think of the negative side, the negative reasons. They don't think about positives here, that Arabs want to play by the rules. Not they are forced and they are fearful and so forth. There are reasons, good reasons and bad reasons. Let me start, okay? Now this is, so what are the negative reasons? That if they do not play by the rules, they will pay very high price. And they don't want to pay very, very high price. So they fear, they know, if they break the law, what Israel was going to do to them. So this is the negative. Now the positive factors are the fact they get all kinds of things from life in Israel, and they want to keep these rewards. They don't want to lose these rewards. So on the one hand, you fear, and the other hand, you get something very positive from the state, and you want to continue getting this. There's another factor, which I call Israelization. They have changed mentally, culturally, by the life for, I'm talking about 75 years of living with Jews living in Israel. That's Israelization. And then I talk about comparison when they compare their situation with other people, with Palestinians, with Jews, and so forth. And then I say, okay, suppose they want to not to keep the law, and what's their alternatives? People do things when they have to choose alternatives. I'm saying they don't have alternatives. So let's go very quickly on this factor. The first one, that they fear a Nakba. They have a collective, very strong collective memory. What happened to the Palestinians in 1948? I already mentioned what happened to them. And they fear if they they will not play by the rules, Israel will not hesitate to do Nakba to them. I mean, Israel will hit them very hard. And they are afraid. And the Nakba is still very strong in their consciousness. Not only of the old people who remember, they don't have the old people who remember what happened in 1948, but all there from one generation to another. This consciousness of the Nakba is very strong among Arabs. Okay? So, now you see also the effect of the war. The effect of the war, they see what Israel is doing to the Palestinians in Gaza. And I don't want to go into this, it's not the purpose of my. What Israel is doing not only in Gaza, but in the West Bank. Israel is taking very strong measures against the Palestinians. So they are seeing it, their fear is even stronger. Okay? Now let's take surveys. I'm going to look about their fears. 87% of the Arabs, they fear that the state might infringe of their basic rights. Will take away their right of vote, take their right to move in the country, all the civil rights they fear. And this is not because of the war. This is before the war. And this is also, this figures, very similar figures, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Because I have made so many surveys, so I gave you just the last survey, okay? They fear land expropriation. That's the worst thing for an Arab to have, is that you take away, to expropriate land, as Israel done during the 50s and early 60s. Expropriate a lot of land from Arabs in Israel. So they are fearing if they will not obey, Israel will explode. 85% afraid of state violence against them. 62% they fear that Israel will transfer them, will kick them out from the country. It's a very hard feelings, if you are a citizen of the state and you fear if you don't behave, okay? If you misbehave, then the country can do all kinds very, very hard things to you. Now, even look, they feel persecution. 79% if they write something very bad against the state in the social media. It's unbelievable. I mean, the fears are so bad. Okay. Now you can see then this is one reason: the consciousness, the collective memory of the Nakba. And they are fearful that Israel has done this in 1948, is doing it now to the Palestinians, and if we don't obey, it will done it for us too. Now, the second reason, which is also, I call it negative, that there is in Israel secure surveillance of Arabs. Israel, the secret service of the state, monitors Arabs' behavior, not only collectively, but also individually. So opponents, real opponents, or people who are planning to do all kinds of things against the state. Usually, the security service is very efficient. They get these people, they take them to court, and they are sentenced and they are punished, and so forth. So the security, the state security control is very important factor in making Arabs playing by the rules. And I'll give you some reason. Hundreds of Arabs were persecuted actually and punished during all Arab disturbances. There were 3 Arab disturbances, one in 1976, the first land strike. The second was in October 2000, and the last one is in May 2021. If you go and see all this stuff, what happened to them, you see that there were hundreds of Arabs who were taken to court about all kinds of things they did. Not terrorism, but all kinds of pronouncement, the way they spoke, and all this. And they were taken and they paid very hard price. So they see that the Israeli court system, police system, is very efficient for anyone who does wrong from the view of the state. Now, 16% of the Arabs were arrested and interrogated by the General Secret Service. Now, 16%, it's all of the whole people who were asked. But think, who is doing this? Who is interrogating? These are the young people. So among the young people, maybe it is twice, not 16%, but maybe 30%. I don't have the figure, but I usually make the figures. I mean, I studied the figure. Now, 18% were harassed and by the authorities, and the most important thing is about half of the Arabs fear that if they will do something significant, they will be harassed by the authorities. And I have to rush, I know. Okay, now let's go now to the positive factors. Israel is a procedural democracy. It's not a liberal democracy. But it grants all civil rights to the Arabs. Arabs in Israel are full citizens of the state. Now, to be a full citizen, you are motivated to use your rights to change your situation. You don't have to use violence because the state gives you the means to fight and to try to change your situation. In the West Bank, they don't have rights, no rights. They are under occupation. So they use violence. I mean, because there is no democracy. But in Israel, there is a democracy, so they can change. So they have all the rights in Israel. Now, but they feel they don't get full rights. They are not really fully equal in the state. 56% of the Arabs say that that Israel is not democracy for Arabs. It's a democracy, but not for Arabs. So it's very critical point for them. And 83% see that they cannot improve their situation by using democratic means, and about 56% they say we are second-class citizens. So, but still, Arabs in Israel appreciate highly their citizenship. They will not tell you that because they don't want to say, okay, you are giving a citizen, now you have to be quiet. But they feel very strongly and appreciate their citizenship. Now, the second point is that Arabs in Israel receive not only individual rights, they receive collective rights, religious collective rights, linguistic rights, cultural rights, and so forth. And the most important thing, they are recognized by the state as Arabs. The state recognizes them as Arabs and grant them the right to preserve their existence and their identity as Arabs. There is no assimilation imposed on them. Israel does not assimilate them. They don't want to assimilate. We are talking about an unassimilable minority which wants to remain and to remain as such and to keep its identity and culture, and Israel provides them with all the means to do so. That's a great thing. This is not done in the United States. It's not done in Germany. It's not done in France and so forth. It's not done. It's done by Israel. So, and they appreciate it very much. So they have education in their language, and Israel fully funds their education. It says state education funded fully by the state. And it's in Arabic, not in Hebrew. It's in Arabic, and it's keeping their culture from one generation to another. They have their own religious courts. So it's not the general courts. It is their own courts, for marriage, divorce, and all kinds of things which have to do with religion. And also, they have Arab national political parties. They can organize politically and all we have 4 Arab political parties, and all of them are national parties. So this is another reward they have, which they want to keep. The third one, the next reward, big reward. They have welfare state benefits. Israel is a welfare state, and they are part of the state. And since they are not most, say majority of them are in the lower classes, in the middle class and lower, usually lower classes get more benefits from the higher classes from the state. So they get more benefits and they want to keep these benefits. We are talking about, for example, child allowances. Every child in Israel gets from the state an allowance. Since they have children, many children, because of the past high rate of growth, they now some economists figured out that they are 14% of the workers or employees in Israel. But they contribute only 8% to GNP because they are in works which are not with high income, so they contribute much less, but they get much more. So they have children allowance, you have disability and unemployment benefits, they have old age pension, negative income tax. If their income is very low, they don't only not pay income tax, but the income tax gives them supplement. So, and they appreciate this very much, and they don't want to lose this. Now, the next factor. In Israel, there is a law saying that people have to fulfill a duty of military service. Men and women. Men for 3 years, women for about 2 years. Okay? Now, Arabs in Israel are exempted. So they are really privileged. Not to serve in the army, you are privileged financially, because if you are a man for 3 years, you go and work and you accumulate income, and a Jew who serves does not, in this 3 years, just in the army, doesn't get any income. So it's good for that, but it's not a question of money only. It's a question of life. I mean, it's very dangerous service in Israel to go to the army. It's not a question just that you are exempted. So they are exempted. So there is no pressure on them to do something which they don't like. They don't want. Not only they don't go to the army, but there is voluntary service open to them, and they don't go. They don't serve. They don't make any civil service. They don't volunteer. I mean, there are some volunteers, but it's a small number of volunteers. So now let's go into the next one, next factor. In Israel, there are two Islamic movements. One in the south, it's called the southern, and one in the northern. The northern is the most important because it is very radical. It does not, it tells its people not to vote to the Knesset. Boycott the Knesset, we don't recognize the state. I mean, Israel, several years ago, outlawed this Islamic movement. Now, Islamic movement, which is a radical, fundamentalist Islamic movement, they can impose their will on the people to obey, the Islam, not to have wine, not to have cigarette, for example. That's against Islamic beliefs. And many things, so they can have religious coercion. But in Israel, the Islamic movement cannot do that, because the state is controlled by the Jews and will not let the Islamic movement do all kinds of things, impose its will on the Arab people. So this is something that Israel is doing for them. They recognize this importance, and so I also see this as one of the positive reasons why they obey by the law. The next factor, that Israel, in all the years, Israel provides Arabs with opportunities for social mobility. for you to get more education, to get a better job, to get to build a house, to do all kinds of things. And in fact, if you look at what happens all these years, their situation, objective situation, had improved. So they improve. I mean, if you see yourself over the years improving, this is something you don't want you don't want to do. Now let me go to another factor, which I call Israelization, which is in my view a very important factor. No, I'm not saying that other factors are not important, but this is something different. Arabs in Israel have changed over the years by living with Jews, by living in a Jewish state. So they become bicultural and bilingual. 80% of the Arabs in Israel, they know Hebrew. They can converse in Hebrew. They can read in Hebrew. They don't have the same command of Hebrew as the Jews, but they know Hebrew. So the fact that you know Hebrew, it changed your view of the state of the Jews and so on. But now also they adopted not Jewish, what we call Israeli culture. They know all the habits of the Jewish culture, and there are really different habits because it's not Western culture. Israeli culture is not a Western culture. So they know. So when they interact with the Jews, they behave like the Jews because they have the culture also of the Jews. Now their primary culture is Arabic. They still, I mean, this is their culture. This is the culture of their community. The language at home is Arabic. It's not Hebrew, and so forth. But they have both cultures and both languages, and this makes their attachment to the state stronger because that's their life. It's not the same as a Palestinian in the West Bank or in Gaza. They are not bicultural or bilingual. They are Palestinians in their culture, whatever, because their interaction with Jews is very good. Now, Arabs in Israel, they have separate Arab education in Arabic, but they also learn Hebrew in their schools. They also learn Jewish history in their schools and so on. So they know the Jews much better than other Palestinians. Okay, now let me go. I have 2 minutes. Maybe I take a little bit. Little bit. Now I call invidious comparisons. Minorities always, when they think of themselves, they just do not think of their aspirations. Did I achieve my aspirations or I did not? Always they compare themselves with other groups. How well I'm doing always depends what other groups which I appreciate, which is important for me, the way their achievements, I compare my achievement with them. Now, all the time, myself also, as an investigator, thought that Arabs in Israel compare themselves with the Jews because the Jews have a better achievement and they want to have the same as the Jews. And always they want the same treatment, that the state will treat them equally like the Jews. And always they feel deprived because Israel does not treat them as Israel treats the Jews. So they are deprived. They feel frustrated and deprived. But more and more I think, and I see it when I talk to Arabs, they also compare themselves to the other Palestinians. They not only compare themselves with the Jews. So an Arab in Haifa or in Nazarian, when they see themselves and they see the life of Palestinians in Gaza and their life, it's unbelievable. It's the disparity is so great, is so high, and they feel they are so privileged. So when they compare themselves to other Palestinians, they see themselves as privileged. Not only that, They know when they talk to Palestinians, the Palestinians see them as privileged. So there is here invidious comparison. So the comparison gives them the feeling, I am in much better situation than other Palestinians. I'm not as good as the Jews. I'm deprived compared to the Jews. But when I think of part of part of my people, Palestinian people, I'm better off. I'm really privileged. And they are really privileged compared with other Palestinians. They are not killed as Palestinians. They are not persecuted as Palestinians. They see themselves as part of Israel. When I say Israelization, you know what? Really, the essence of Israelization, they see their fate and future tied with Israel, not with the Palestinians. In fact, what happened to the Arabs in Israel, they have developed over the years as a separate segment of the Palestinian people. They are part of the Palestinian people, but different part and separate part of the Palestinian people. And this is their real Israelization. Okay, and now I'm really finishing now, but let me mention something here about what I call counteracting bodies. Now they say, why they are not reported now because of this war? That's what happened in May 2021. There were all kinds of violent skirmishes between Arabs and Jews in the mixed cities, in Arab Jewish cities, like Haifa, like Lod, and so forth. Why they are not doing the same? They are not doing the same because the police now is prepared to deal with all kinds of violence that might occur. In May 2021, it was not prepared. It was surprised, you know what happened. Now they are already prepared. Their forces are outside. They know how to move their forces if they need it. And then there is another thing. There are all kinds of civil society organizations, what we call NGOs, which are Arab and Jewish together. They say if there'll be something, we are going to move into the area to prevent it. So these two steps I think shows that why it is so quiet. Now the last point, the Arabs in Israel have no real alternatives. What they will do, okay? You choose a better alternative. The better alternative is to leave Israel, to go somewhere else, okay? Well, they can go to the West. That's the best place to go to America, to go to France, and so forth. But they cannot go. There is no visas. You cannot go. Now to go to these places, you have to get a visa, immigration visa. It's immigration visa is not given. This is something. And also, there is a big price to live in the West for an Arab. Because if you are an Arab in the West, you lose your language, you lose your culture over generations. Because the societies in the West, the states in the West, do not provide you with the means to keep your language, your culture. They are very assimilating countries. The West is very assimilating. Israel is not assimilating. If you stay in Israel, you keep your language and culture and so forth, your identity. So they don't have. Well, to go to Gaza, to live in Gaza, to live in the West Bank, it's much worse. So you don't have. So let me conclude with a few conclusions. The conclusion is the situation of Arabs in Israel is very complex. It has bad aspects and good aspects. So they play by the rules, not only because of fears. Of course, there is a fear. There is a fear of the Nakba. There is a fear of the state control agencies. What can they do? They fear that if they do something, they will lose also all kinds of benefits they lose. But Also because they are Israelized. They are not the same as Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. They are different kind of people. They lived with the Jews. They have both Arab cultures and Jewish cultures. They have both Arabic and also Hebrew and so forth. They got used to this kind of life. They don't want to lose this kind of life. So all this I think this explains. So when the war started and was very clear, it's a very bad situation for us. Many Jews and the state were afraid that they are going to break the rules, and I was very relaxed. I said, by no means they will break the rules. They will continue, even if this war is very bad war for them nationally, because their people are killed and repaired and all this stuff. Even that, they feel very bad, but they obey the law and they play by the rules. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Smooha, for this really, really fascinating talk. We have a lot of questions from the audience. So I will start by asking you the first question, which pertains to your surveys. And the question is, what trends do you see in the surveys from 10, 20 years ago? Because you really are positioned in a very um, key way of looking into these trends. And as you briefly discussed, you haven't seen much variations in some. So in some areas, at least in terms of fears and public opinion. So in what areas did you actually see real differences over the years?
With regard to attitudes, let me have
Yes.
with regards to Arab attitudes. Now, always my question is, are Arabs becoming radical? Are they losing their legitimacy of the state? Are they giving more justification for the use of violence? Not only strikes and demonstrations and so forth. No, there are ups and downs. And I mentioned only some historical events which really changed or affected other opinions. When I started my service in 1976, it was after the first strike, the Libyan strike, 4 months after. And I asked very simple question, Arabs, that usually maybe you don't think of asking. I said, the question is, does Israel have the right to exist? Will you ask blacks, African Americans in the United States, does the United States have a right to exist? You don't ask this question. But in this question, in Israel, it makes sense. And in 1976, after the first strike, 20% said that Israel has no right to exist. 20%, it's a big figure, a small figure. How I should interpret this? For me, it was very low figure. Because they are not Zionists. I gave all the reasons, when I said why. They feel potentially disloyal, the way they are treated. And many are discriminated and they are excluded. Oh, they have all the reasons. Only 20%. And this is after a strike. Now, another event. I had the survey in 1995. I have other surveys, but in 1995, this was after 3 years of Rabin's government. Government started the government in 1992, and then he was murdered in 1995. And I had my survey 2 months before he died. He was murdered. Can you imagine? How many Arabs say that Israel has no right to exist? 7%. Because they saw Rabin as a savior of the Palestinian people, of them. He changed policies of discrimination against Arabs in Israel. He gave them a lot of money to Arab education. There were discriminatory children allowances. They gave two kinds of allowances to children. And if you served in the army, you get twice as an Arab. And he abolished this policy. And so forth. They were crying because of his death. More, not less than the Jews cried. Because he treated them very well. So their opinions also are impacted. And you know, the last survey, this one, I took, the 2023, went up to 30%. Negation, they don't accept Israel. Why? It's under Netanyahu. The way this government is treating them and so. But still, it's not the majority of Arabs. It is small minority of Arabs. It's high, much higher than 7% under Rabin. So what I'm saying, there are ups and downs, but if you look at the macro level, they legitimize Israel. They legitimize Israel, and they don't support violence. Talking about views now, attitudes, of the Arabs. So depends how you analyze the figures. So I analyze long-term tendencies, and long-term tendencies is, I call this they play by the rules.
And speaking about your analysis, an audience question is if you could please describe more the methods used for sampling, data collection, and analysis in your studies.
Yes, I'm sorry I had this slide, but I talk about all my surveys of Arabs. Always I make parallel surveys. One survey of Arabs and one survey of the Jews at the same time. So I can compare their views toward the state and toward the other side. Okay. Now, all my surveys in starting 1980 till 2003, they were based on 1,200 Arabs and taken randomly. It's a random sample taken from 28 towns and villages, which represent the whole country, and we take a sample from the Ministry of Interior of all people who are citizens of the state, and they choose by name the people from each community. We get this and we interview them person to person, not by phone, always person to person. And the last one, now I don't know, but usually now surveyors do not make person to person, face to face interviews. They make by phone, by internet, and so on. With Arabs, because we feel trust is very important, so we send an interviewer, an Arab interview, who gives the interview in Arabic and get the trust of the person before the interview. So we believe that these people are frank with us, they are open with us. So this is vis-a-vis the Arabs. With the Jews, it's a different story. Because the Jews, they are not fearful, they are not, they can talk, whatever, doesn't matter. There is no politically correct for the Jews. Now, we also take 1,200 Jews. In the 80s and 90s, we made half in person to person and half by phone. But now in the last 10 years, it's mostly internet, but also part of them it's made in Hebrew and in Russian. If a person does not speak Hebrew well, they interview in Russian. So all of them are random representative survey of the entire population. Means that men and women are proportionately, young people 18 years and older. That's always.
And I think you made a really interesting and elaborate case of why they play by the rules. But I was wondering if you can explain to us the situations in which they do not play by the rules. What is your explanation for the 2021 Shomel? Like, what are the instances when they?
You mean in the mixed cities?
Yes, or the mixed cities riots of 2021, and what would be the explanation for that?
I said the explanation is that the police did not move in to separate the Jewish and the Arab groups. They were not prepared. And then also at the time till they intervened, the police intervened, there were a lot of settlers, Jewish settlers, came to the communities to do troubles. So there were some extremists entering and not stopped by the police. And also, as I said, NGOs were not active at the time. Arab leaders were not active at the time. They were taken by surprise. This time, they are not taken by surprise. That's the reason. Now, you know how many people were killed during the last encounter skirmishes in May 2021? You know how many? We're talking about rioting. Arabs are rioting. You know what happened? 2 people were killed. 2 people, and everyone was killed at the border. But it's very, minor scale. It's not a real thing. I mean, compare it what happened in Sri Lanka. There was a civil war between the Tamils and the Sinhalese. 30,000 were killed from both sides in the civil war. For 30 years it went. Here we have in the mixed cities, a couple of days, 1 or 2 people were killed. Now also you have to think how much property was lost, because all this when you use violence, you also destroy property. The destruction of property is also minor. So I say all this, they are talking about what's happened between Jews and Arabs. I said, hell, look what's happening in Turkey. How the government represses the Kurds using arms. They don't recognize, Turkey does not recognize Kurdish language. They impose on the Kurds 5 million people, on them assimilation. You assimilate, you are not a Kurd. You are a Turk. Don't mention Kurds. No Kurds. Not such thing. So it's we can explain all the stuff. That's not a real problem. I think we are over exaggerating the times or the occasions in which some Arabs, do not play by the rules. So overall, for me, Arabs play by the rules. I gave you very complicated reason. It's not one reason or another reason, not only positive reason, but also bad, negative reason. It's very complicated situation.
Thank you. We have a few questions from the audience that kind of pertain to the same notions, and that is, do you survey or do you know how they feel about a 2-state solution? And then a different question that pertains to that too is in case there was a Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza, where would they feel comfortable living?
I studied these questions very carefully for a long time. When, first of all, most of Arabs in Israel for many, many years, till last survey last year, they support two-state solution. The Jews only now, a minority of Jews, support two-state solution. Arabs support two-state solution. Now, there is always a question in my surveys, said if there will be a Palestinian state alongside Israel, would you move to it? You know how many percent say they will move to it? It changes, depends on the situation, from 10% to 20%. That's the worst. They won't move to. That's what I said in this comparison. Or what they don't have, pragmatic. That's not a pragmatic. Meanwhile, they go to the West Bank, it's not democratic, it has no welfare state. What do they have? I mean, it has violence and so forth. It's not attraction.
And in your surveys, do you distinguish between Muslim and Christian Arabs?
Yes, I do. I have three religions: Druze, Christians, and Muslims. Now, the real difference is between Druze and other Arabs. The Druze, they gave up their Palestinian nationalism. They don't see themselves as Palestinians. So when they give up their nationhood, then they accept Israel. I mean, ideologically they accept Israel. Not that they have some fears and stuff. They want to be part of Israel. They legitimize Israel and so forth. And they are the most hurt by the nation state law. They said, look, we are Israelis like you. How can you say in your law that we don't belong to the state? The state belongs only to the Jews. They are very much insulted, and they are the most protest done is by the Druze. So the Druze are very different in their views from other Arabs. Now, the difference between Christian Arabs and Muslim
Can
Arabs.
you maybe just elaborate a little bit for our audience who are not that familiar with the
What is a Druze?
with the Druze and how are they different?
Druze, it's a Druze language, no, not language. The Druze religion is of the 12th century. They separated from Islam. They were persecuted for that for centuries. And then during the period before the state, they started to cooperate. But during the period, the mandatory period, were considered Arabs by the British, and they didn't like it. And they started to cooperate with Jews. During the War of Independence, they cooperated with Jews. Very few of them were kicked out. Usually, they were not kicked out. So, and then in the 50s, Israel imposed military duty on them. So they serve in the army like the Jews. And they go to the army, they go to the police, they go to, I mean, they are in this way. And there are tension between them and other Arabs. For me, Druze are Arabs because their language is Arab, their culture is in Arab. They live with Arab usually, or they have separate villages and so forth. So they are culturally not different from Arabs, but their situation in Israel is different than ours.
And given your surveys and the trends that you see, do you find that there is a realistic pathway towards a systemic change that would make or help make Palestinians equal and also feel more connected to the states, or how do you see that?
I used to be very optimistic, but I'm losing my optimism about our future in Israel because Israeli democracy is not liberal. I call Israeli democracy ethnic democracy, in which there is Jewish supremacy built in, not because one Jew or another wants this, because the state is constituted this way. And I mentioned the nation state law. It's very clear, put it very clearly. So once you have it, you cannot have equality between Arabs and Jews. As long as Israel remains Zionist, which means that the state does not belong to its citizens, then Arabs will not have full equality. Now, let me make now this clear, very clear. They have equal rights, more or less, individual rights, citizenship rights, they have more or less equal citizenship rights. And they have also collective rights, religious, lingual, culture, and so forth. What they don't have then? They don't have national rights. And Israel will not give them national rights. National rights means that they will be recognized by the state as Palestinians, as part of the Palestinian people, that their identity as Palestinian will be legitimate, not considered to be danger to the state. This means that they can associate freely with Palestinians. They can join whatever. They cannot do it. First of all, they cannot do it because the Palestinians are enemy of the state. And secondly, because Israel is a Zionist state. So they are worried. So their situation will be better. They will have more upward mobility. Their education will be better. Today, you won't believe it. More than 40% of the medical staff in Israel is an Arab. 40%. There are only 18% of the population, but twice as much in the medical field. So they can make it. They can be accepted as individuals. They are respected for religion and for their language and so forth. But the state belongs to the Jews. There will be no symbols, Arab symbols. The Jews will not let it happen. They will also be suspected of national security because they are part of the Palestinian people and so forth. So it's very difficult life to be an Arab. On the one hand, you are part of the state. On the other hand, you are excluded from the state. You have to make your mind. It's not really easy. So if the situation will be better if you ask me 15 years ago, I'll say yes. I even wrote an article to show that. So now I don't think this is going to be, will be very, hardship in their relations and this. But what I can tell you for sure, what I believe, as a researcher, not as a person, they will play by the rules. They are not going to break the rules. They will remain part of Israel. They will keep law and order, and they will more and more maybe integrated. By the way, but integration is going down. It's not going up because of the situation. People, they don't want to associate. Jews and Arabs, they are less associated in the last 10 years than before, because the situation is getting very, very, very bad in the relations between Israel and the Palestinians.
Right. So we are out of time. Thank you so much for this really fascinating talk. And thank you all for attending, and also for everybody on Zoom. Thank you for watching. And that's it.